15 solo albums, 3 compilation projects, 2 collaboration albums, 7 of which have gone platinum, 5 #1 debuts. When we're talking about rapper catalogs, there are very few names that can stack up against Nasir Jones. Ever since his groundbreaking 1994 debut, Stillmatic, the legendary New York rapper has experienced plenty of ups and downs in his career. He's copped a lot of hate and been compared endlessly to Jay-Z, but he's always come back and proven the doubters wrong. In the past 2 years, Nas has dropped not 1, but 3 great albums, and in the process, destroyed any notion of his inconsistency and knack for rapping over bad production. So in honor of the great Queensbridge rhymeslinger, we're going to rank every Nas album ever released. The single lowest point of Nas' legendary 30-year career. The original plan was to have Nastradamus as part of a double album called I Am the Autobiography, but heavy bootlegging led to Nas rushing out a new release under a different title. The result was a bland. On that album, there's a couple of songs that have a certain sound to it that doesn't sound like anything else I've done, Nas told Rolling Stone in 2014. And it was a gray area in my life, and that album represents that gray area. It was personal stuff that I'd rather not elaborate on. You can't blame fans for being hyped about this album. The original Lost Tapes remains one of the most beloved Nas projects of all time, and when you saw the producer line up for the sequel, it was a hip-hop head's dream. From RZA, Kanye, and Pete Rock to DJ Toomp, The Alchemist, and No ID. It was the who's who of greatest rap producers of all time. Unfortunately, like many hyped-up rap albums, The Lost Tapes 2 failed to meet expectations, and has been relegated to the Nas archives. Another album where people marked the downfall of Nas, the newly engaged rapper at the time, decided to release a double album counting up to 24 solo tracks. While 24 tracks of Nas sounds like a great time, the album was bloated with many forgettable songs. However, the gems uncovered on this album were so good that a compilation of them could have worked better in Nas' favor rather than an entire double album. Songs like The Sentimental, Just a Moment, and The Chaotic, Thief's Theme keep the album entertaining when you find yourself out of interest. The highly controversial Untitled album marked a very strange phase in Nas' life and career. Intending to name the album after a slur, he was prevented from naming the album as he liked and had to resort to using Untitled. Surprisingly enough, Nas nailed the mainstream records this time around. Songs such as The Dynamic Hero on the album. Even so, Nas built this album to be a political product of the time, discussing everything from the Obama campaign to criticisms of the Bush administration. Due to the political landscape at the time playing a huge role in the album, you find that the album doesn't age well compared to the times and events of today. But similar to all albums on the lower end of the list, there are many gems to be uncovered on this project. After 6 years without releasing a project, Nas returned to the scene in 2018 with the product of the Kanye West Wyoming sessions. While you'd think a Nas album fully produced by Kanye would be a recipe for success, the product would soil very quickly as Kanye was caught up in the camaraderie of working on 5 projects at once. The concepts of the songs were genius, from flipping the iconic Slick Rick song Children's Story on Cops Shot the Kid, to reconciling with Puff for the rebellious Not for Radio. The music was very solid, but seemed very unfocused, and could have been better had Kanye not scheduled this in between working on various albums at once. The firm was on track to be the next biggest hip-hop group at the time after the classic Posse cut. Affirmative Action received a lot of praise. Along with Dr. Dre working as an executive producer of the Firm album, the project was on its way to success. Unfortunately, the album would encounter numerous problems with industry relations and disagreements among the group, making the album a chaotic compilation rather than the supergroup success we had hoped for. Despite the minor inconsistencies, the album itself was fairly good for what it was and contains a lot of classic tracks with many features from Cannabis, Nori, and the group's new addition at the time of release, Nature. The collaboration album with reggae legend Damian Marley was an overlooked gem at the time of release. Fusing the two genres of hip-hop and reggae was, as the name of the album suggests, bringing the two distantly relative genres together to create a great body of work. Not only that, but features from both genres contribute to the project, including Lil Wayne and Junior Reid, bridging the generational gap within the two musical categories. Admittedly, it doesn't stand out like an Omatic or It Was Written, but the whole album front to back is a great experience. Nas' 8th studio album, Hip Hop Is Dead, was another album that was swept under the rug, mainly due to the controversial title. The name Hip Hop Is Dead triggered a lot of artists, old and new, as they were under the impression that Nas declared the genre to be deceased. In reality, Nas was trying to bring back the authentic feel of hip-hop, where artists were in control of the art they created, rather than industry machines producing one-hit wonders. To accompany the concept, Nas created songs talking about the state of hip-hop culture, the forgotten legends, and carrying on the traditions and values they instilled in his peer group. Along with remembering the past, Nas drops game on each track for the newer generation to follow in his and his peers' footsteps. Songs like the legendary Black Republican with Jay-Z provide for standout moments, while the zealous Hustlers with The Game help bridge the gap in a divided genre between the old school and the new school. This album doesn't get the shine it really deserves, as almost every track lays the foundation to Nas embracing his OG status in hip-hop. The unexpected collaboration between Nas and producer Hit Boy was the pairing that we didn't know we needed until we heard it. Hit Boy provides a modern sound with a vintage feeling to his production, which is suitable for a rapper like Nas. The chemistry between the two is transparent throughout the album and shows Nas tapping in more with the newer generation, with features from Big Sean and others. The album isn't just Nas stepping out of his comfort zone, as songs such as the nostalgic Car Number 85 and the All-Star Firm Reunion Full Circle are included to show that he isn't fully changing up anytime soon. The 38-minute album was a great 2020 standout, and one of Nas' more successful attempts at embracing the modern wave of hip-hop. Building off of the template from the 2020 release of King's Disease, Nas and Hit Boy reunite at the height of their partnership to deliver an extension of their original collaboration. In a time where deluxe projects have reached extreme saturation, the duo of Nas and Hit Boy managed to keep the experience fresh while polishing up the original blueprint. The amazing chemistry between the two improves tremendously as the duo push each other into more challenging territories, such as Nas embracing the new trap-inspired sound on tracks 40 Side and Yik TV, while Hit Boy ups his production game and even adds a verse on Composure. Nas does an amazing job of bridging the gap between old school and new school hip-hop, incorporating a timeless, yet modern sound, and bringing in a diverse roster of features, ranging from Lauryn Hill to YG. The third installment of Hit Boy produced collaborations serves as a continuation of Nas' cultural observations and lyrical exercises, with the Queen's MC getting his mojo back. Magic keeps the momentum going, with Nas finding a healthy balance of blending in with the new generation of hip-hop while simultaneously leveraging his 30-plus years of experience as a masterclass for MCs of all calibers. Though the New York veteran is all about erasing the bad energy from his life, Magic shows remnants of the military-minded street poet on records like Speechless and Meet Joe Black. Just when we thought we had heard the duo reach their creative peak, Nas and Hit Boy extend their palette further and build upon the successful foundation from the King's Disease series. Nas comes through with the signature quick-witted rhymes that we know and love, with the perfect array of soul-infused beats from Hit Boy finest to match the King of New York and LA's finest Dead Any by Coastal Beef by completing their hip-hop trilogy, showing fans it's possible for hip-hop artists to maintain longevity in the genre. The King has done it once again, almost a year to the day since he dropped his 9-track Tease Magic, where he told listeners that King Disease 3 was on the way. The legendary rapper stuck to his word and dropped it. Unlike the past albums of Nas' recent run, the album doesn't feature any guest appearances, it's just the Queensbridge Spitter over smooth but gritty production. Both Nas and Hit Boy are locked in and in prime mode right here, which is sort of unbelievable considering the rapper debuted 31 years again with his verse on Lev at the barbecue. Following the tragic news of his mother's passing, Nas made Godson almost as a tribute to his angel in heaven, after dropping the lost tapes earlier that year. Many were under speculation that Nas would undertake a more soulful sound on this project, and while there were some soul elements in the samples, Godson took a different approach sonically. Godson stuck to the same formula as the critically acclaimed Stillmatic, but Nas makes a few changes along the way. We find Nas becoming more vulnerable, with songs like Dance, which is an emotional roller coaster Nas takes us on to display his final words to his mother, and Thug's Mansion I, a heartfelt tribute to those that were lost in the street life, containing vocals from Tupac to add more emotional elements. A rather peculiar album in Nas' discography, I Am doesn't get the credit it deserves for being a Nas album. What turns people away from I Am was the shaky rollout Nas endured. For those that don't know, this album was leaked 2 months prior from its initial release date, leaving Nas scurrying for a fresh batch of tracks to include. When the album dropped, many were disappointed because the final product was nothing like the leaked version online, leaving a bad reputation on I Am despite its commercial success. The lead singles for the album gained traction in the streets and the charts. The DJ Premier produced Nas Is Like still rings in the ears of hip-hop heads, while the Puff Daddy assisted Hate Me Now created a tremendous build-up to the album's release. The end product of I Am contains some of the best album cuts ever, with Favor for a Favor bringing Nas and Scarface together for a legendary cut, and Undying Love setting up one of the best storytelling songs in all of hip-hop. While it faced a lot of bumps on the road, Nas' most mature record to date, this album is Nas coming to terms with things occurring in his personal life. Everything from his recent divorce to his daughter growing up. Nas spills out every ounce of his personal life on this project. Almost every song on this album means something and represent a part of Nas' life one way or another. Songs like Daughters and Reach Out keep Nas in this zone of sentiment. But the good old Nas we know and love isn't completely gone. Who would have thought one of Nas' best projects would be a series of loosies and throwaways that could have been great album cuts on previous projects, containing some of the best production he has rapped on since Stillmatic. The lost tapes showed people that Nas was still lethal on the mic in a time where many thought he lost his touch. With tracks like the dynamic Blaze of 50 and the soothing Do-Rags, Nas' string of throwaways proved to be better than most rappers' best projects. Admittedly, the idea of an artist scrap songs all on one album doesn't sound too appealing, but with the amount of songs Nas had to replace due to leaks, the songs would have released one way or another. The ecstatic moment hip-hop had when this dropped was second to none. After getting dissed on the Summer Jam stage by his rival, Jay-Z, Nas knew he had to come back better than ever. As a result, Stillmatic was released. Some of Nas' best moments, from opening the album with the classic diss record, Ether, to telling a whole story backwards on Rewind, were redeeming factors that helped the project receive the stamp of classic status. However, the significant change came through the production. One of the main complaints for I Am and Nastradamus was how whack the beats were on Stillmatic. Every beat and sample was amazing, whether it was the serious yet dynamic atmosphere on One Mic, or the classic piano keys on Got Yourself a Gun. Nas' beat selection on Stillmatic phenomenally improved. There's no doubt Nas made another classic with this project, and just a little over 20 years later, the album has aged like fine wine. The mafioso inspired it was written took Nas into a different direction from the path of his debut. While Stillmatic focused on the problems that were going on in the hood, it was written focused on the shisty actions that gave the hood a strong perception. Every song that played was a different experience. You never know what you're going to encounter when engaging on your first listen. Whether you catch the dynamic story of life from a gun's perspective on Gave You Power, or the crime mob of the neighborhood linking together on Affirmative Action, every song was a unique experience. The debates between it was written and Stillmatic still continue after 25 years, as many think Nas delivered the perfect follow-up to the classic debut, while others fully represent for the titan of a classic that would be his dynamic entry into the hip-hop world. The mecca of hip-hop and undebatably the best debut album in hip-hop, Stillmatic created waves in the genre and is still the standard for lyricism today. Nas captivated listeners with the nostalgic feeling of the album that'll have non-New York residents feel like they lived in the neighborhood for years. However, the nostalgic feel didn't deliver everything to Sweet, as the main focus for Nas was to speak on the conditions he and others in his neighborhood lived in. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe. Peace.